All right, good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, April 9th, 2025. It is 9:03. Start the Town of Fort Myers Beach Management and Planning Session. All town council members are present, town attorney, town clerk, and town manager. If you'll please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. First item for discussion, we have a presentation for wave mitigation wall. Elizabeth Fountain is here. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Elizabeth Fountain with J.R. Evans Engineering. I'm a professional civil engineer and also a certified floodplain manager. Been working in this area since 1999, so have a lot of history and background and experience. We also specialize in coastal engineering as well. We are representing the civil engineer and coastal engineer for several projects on the beach, such as Outrigger, Neptune, upcoming potential Sandpiper. So been in the area a long time and have a good amount of experience. So I understand that there is some concern about the Times Square area, being able to redevelop that part of the town in a way that helps activate some of those ground level activities and uses. And one of the potential solutions, and I know that property is in the zone VE according to the FEMA flood maps, and that's a very restrictive zone as far as what's allowed. Everything has to be elevated and breakaway walls, and not much can happen until it's above that base flood elevation or higher. From what we have experience in doing what we call wave mitigation walls, and they are not tall walls. They're not 6 or 8 foot high. They're more like 3 to 3.5 foot above the grade, and they actually cause a disruption in the wave action that comes from the Gulf of Mexico across the shoreline during a hurricane event, and it causes enough disturbance to mitigate to drop those wave heights and energy down to a level that's not considered a VE zone. And with the implementation of that feature, we've been able to modify the FEMA flood maps. It gets reviewed technically by FEMA and their staff. The wall is designed to withstand the 100-year forces during that event. We've been successful with many projects in doing this, all through Florida on the East Coast and the West Coast. And it allows the landward property on that landward of that wall to be designated in a lesser risk zone, so that helps to incorporate some flexibility about what can be done for new buildings in that area. So I have some examples to show you. This is the overall map of, it's a focus of Fort Myers Beach and the Times Square area. And you can see the red zone is the VE boundary zone. The white lines represent the different levels of flood zone coming across the island. So the higher risk zones are definitely along the shoreline, and then as it progresses inland, the elevations drop. So the VE zone extends to the northeast side of Estero Boulevard, and covers most of those properties along the southwest side. So go to the next slide. So this is up in Clearwater Beach. It's at the Hyatt Resort, and you can see that I've pointed out arrows to what looks like just a seating wall, right? But that is actually a wave dissipation wall. It serves a function. So it actually, we were able to do a flood map modification based on the implementation of that wall. And then it allowed the lower part of the Hyatt Resort to be activated with commercial uses, as long as they were properly dry flood proofed. And it's integrated into the pedestrian footprint, active, area for them to use as seating. Doesn't have to be a straight wall. It could be a curvilinear wall that is very aesthetically pleasing. So this works out very well. You go to the next slide.
How tall is that? Was that about 3 feet?
3
or-
feet.
And then how far does it go down?
It varies. Some of these walls are cantilevered, either concrete panels or sheet piles that are driven into the ground.
Okay.
And the depth of that will depend on the forces that are coming to it for it to withstand and not cause the overturning or failure of that wall.
Okay.
So, but it usually has a concrete cap that will fit over top of it, and that concrete cap can be finished in any way. But the concrete is designed to also be stable during those flood conditions. And we've actually done a few projects on Benita Beach for the condominiums that are on the north side or on the north tip of Hickory Boulevard, before you make the turn to go across Lover's Key. And there was already an existing buried concrete panel wall there. It's been there since the 80s. But to address the concerns of those condominium properties from wave impacts and from sand getting transported with every storm, and filling up their properties, we are implementing a cap extension of like 3 feet. And that's currently under construction right now. And there's a couple others who have done a smaller cap extension, like in the past 5 years. And those actually had no problems during Hurricane Ian, Milton, or Helene. They survived. So I have pictures of those I can share. This is a plan view of, looking from bird's eye view, looking down on Hyatt. And I point to where that location of the wave dissipation wall is. Go to the next slide. We also did the neighboring property to the north, which is the Wyndham Grand. That property, it was only encumbered by the Zone VE on the very northwest corner. This used to be an open parking lot, and the Wyndham Grand client bought the property for development. And so we actually did a similar wave mitigation wall in that northwest corner. And then they integrated it in with their hardscape. So they have a set of stairs there that come up to a elevated deck. And the wall is behind that deck, so nobody sees it. But it's there and it serves a function. And we were able to successfully modify the FEMA maps to get that property fully in an A zone. It also saved them $500,000 on construction. So it was a really significant savings to them. Next slide. This is I did a current street view of the Hyatt wall, so you could see that it's still there. And people are actively using it as a seating area. Next slide. And then this is the Clearwater view, the Wyndham Grand. So that wall is in behind those set of stairs, but it's covered up, so you don't even know it's there. So I present this to you as an opportunity maybe to look at doing something similar for the Times Square area, and maybe even the adjacent public parks to help mitigate wave action. I understand that there's a restroom facility being designed for the county park, and that there's a way to get that property in an A zone. There may be a way to help have those restrooms not be elevated, that they could be dry flood proof and be more accessible to the public. So I'm here to answer any questions.
I walked that entire wall after Hurricane Milton.
You
And
did?
I was surprised to see how well it really did hold up, other than maybe a couple of caps, the concrete caps were missing.
Yeah.
But one thing that really stood out was the stage at the main park there, that without that wall, that would have been gone.
Yes,
For sure, that would have been gone.
yes.
And they were working on it, and they were just doing the work of what the water damage caused. It wasn't structural.
Right.
So it was pretty impressive to see, and I did notice that wall was hidden there, but I was
Yes.
looking for it.
Okay. Yep, it is hidden there. And I can, if you need, I can provide the actual, our construction plans for it, so you can see what it, you know, the structure of it, what it looks like. But I think it's a good opportunity, and we're actually doing this for the Outrigger property right now. Doing a similar type of structure to help get that property in a more favorable designation, because it'll help with, activating some of those public benefit uses that they wanna do there.
You know, I've been talking to her about this for probably 2 years now,
Have you?
since Ian.
Yep,
And to your point, how it would have changed the flood zone, and we could have built back Times Square at grade level had this been in place beforehand.
yes,
But we
You know-
still can, if we.
You still
go-
can, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, you still can, but, you know, ideally, I'd love to see this all the way down the entire island.
Right,
I mean, It would
exactly.
provide,
walkway. And so we did the ramps, as long as when you look from the shoreline, you know, perpendicular, you know, to the property, as long as that wall, you can have the two ends overlap and have like a path in the middle between them. As long as it looks like a solid wall, as far as if you were a wave coming through, then it'll suffice as if it were one continuous wall. So we designed it like that.
How high do you think we'd need that wall in Times Square?
3.5 feet at the most,
Wow.
just to mitigate that wave action, and it's really just disturbing.
I think,
It's the same thing that the ocean floor does as the waves come up on the beach, you know, as the elevation of the beach rises, those waves start to break. So this just, you know, during those higher surge events, this will just further diminish that wave action.
similar to a seawall. The, one thing I noticed also too that you didn't touch on was on the other side of it, which would be the opposite of the seaward side, was looked like a 12 or 15-foot path that was walkable, bikeable, and the amount of people that were using that to traverse. Being able, looking at this, you know, grand visions of if you could have it down the entire island, this eliminates a lot of the issues that we're talking about when it comes to bikes and traffic and
Yep.
getting people from one end of the island to the other end. I mean,
It's
it-
similar to what they did on, you know, Fort Lauderdale. They have that, there's a portion of A1A, I
Yeah.
think, that's continuous with a wall and a walking path, and it's the same concept. It's protecting that public infrastructure.
And I know,
Go ahead.
I know when we talked to Elizabeth, there's resiliency grants for this that can help with implementation and, you know, cause I mean, I'm envisioning it all the way from Lynn Hall Park down or even further. I mean, anybody could get involved with it that wanted to save their property.
Well, I would think TDC funding would be available for it.
Yep, exactly. So a combination of wherever else we could get
Especially if
funding
it's,
and.
you know, if it's a design that's sustainable. You know, a lot of times, some of the properties, I think, have some older walls, you know, perimeter walls, but they're probably more traditional seawall construction and not as stable under those conditions as this feature would be.
Well, it can also be a part of a public benefit when a developer wants to develop something.
Sure,
they
that
can- They
section.
can chip into that section.
Well, and it's not just the wall and the concrete. If you haven't had a chance to go up and look at it, I recommend you do, because it's, you have lights built into it, you know, the amber lights that are walk path lights, as well as drinking fountains and water stations along the way, and it was really thought out really well. And you don't even know it's an armoring wall. You just, you just think it's a boardwalk,
Right,
but it's actually serving a functionality,
yes, sir.
or purpose, I guess, not functionality.
It serves a big purpose.
Too many donuts.
Too many
Or not
donuts.
enough.
Vice Mayor?
I did a couple quick questions. Thanks for being here. Just for definitional purposes, what's the formal difference between a seawall and a wave wall that you're describing here?
So this wave wall is specifically designed to stay in place during those anticipated wave forces during the 100-year event, and it's based on the FEMA, the latest and, you know, most recent FEMA modeling. and it accounts for scour. So when we do these designs, we anticipate there may be some scour in front of, on the seaward side of the wall. So we estimate what that scour is. And then we also look at the landward side, to see what conditions may occur.
If you ran into somebody on the street, and you're telling what you do, how would you explain the difference between this and a seawall?
The purpose of this wall is to successfully mitigate wave action and reduce the potential impacts, flood damage impacts to structures on the landward side of it. Seawalls are not typically designed, they're designed for stability and to withstand maybe the hydrostatic forces of the water rising, not necessarily wave action. It's a more dynamic force.
Thank you. This concept of a boardwalk related to this wave wall is extremely intriguing. I assume you're aware of our transportation challenges. How interconnected is the boardwalk with the wave wall? In other words, can you have one without the other, or are they inextricably linked?
The boardwalks aren't always part of the project. It's really based on the desires and the intent of the client. So it could be separate.
But as we're selling this to our
Yeah.
various constituents, obviously pitching them together would be great, but they're
Yes.
not necessarily related, just potential.
They're not dependent on each other.
They're not dependent upon each other,
Yes.
just a bonus opportunity.
Yes, sir.
And lastly, and you could comment on this if you want, I'm just curious, you mentioned the outrigger. Is what you're doing at the outrigger, will that potentially give them additional freedoms to have potentially a tiki bar in the back? Is that one of the potential benefits?
Potential and the public and the restrooms, more
Being
on
at ground
level.
On ground
That's the big
level.
As long as they're flood-proofed, dry
Yeah,
flood-proof.
dry
Yes,
flood-proof, okay.
yes.
Great.
And like in Times Square, if it was there, I mean, we wouldn't have to go up 18 feet for restrooms. They could be,
At grade level, yes.
yeah, grade level and that type of thing, so it would change the whole dynamics there. And the rebuilds,
For the cost of construction.
Yeah, and I would,
much less, yeah.
And it would likely lower the base flood elevation probably by a foot, as well, because the base flood elevation is always based on the top of that wave, the wave height. So if you're able to lower the wave heights, usually that translates into at least a foot lower BFE on the landward side.
I would think too, Mr. Mayor, with respect to the TDC, the synergies between Lynn Hall Park, Times Square, the new pier, that would create a pretty strong argument for TDC funding, I would think, and obviously, I'd love to, I'm with everybody else, I'd love to see it expanded beyond that. But yeah, very intriguing concept. Thank you.
Mayor, Frank just reminded, we're gonna incorporate this into the Newton Park as well, this type of thing.
It would allow us, when we designed that project, would allow us to, instead of having a portable
Right.
restroom area, and we had built that in already to have some kind of a barrier, to allow us to have dry wet proof restrooms at ground level at Newton. With the existing seawall forward and then the mitigating wall behind it. So that was already built into our design.
Is there the cost, rough cost, is there a linear foot type cost that you assign to it?
I've seen the cost range from, trying to think. And a lot goes into it because it depends on how, as far as mobilization, how easy it is to access the construction property.
It's wide open there.
It is wide open right now, I know.
You can access it from any direction.
No resistance.
In the range of probably like 5 to 750 a linear foot, 500 to 750 a linear foot.
Depending.
Or
Huh?
dollars or $100,000?
No,
$500.
500 to 750 per linear foot of wall.
Dollars, not.
Okay.
Dollars.
I was prepared
Dollars.
for the worst.
$500 to
been a
750,
government
that
too
range.
long.
Yeah. And I'm
Because I
guessing,
think on Bonita Beach, the one we're doing for Bonita Beach Club, it's a the 3-foot cap addition, and it's like 300 feet long. And I think the cost is around 240,000.
Just given your knowledge of Times Square, given there's private ownership on some of those properties,
Yes.
could they, since there would be benefit to them as well, there could potentially be a public-private partnership where they would share in those costs?
Yes. And I was originally thinking maybe there could be something like, you know, what you see at the Hyatt in that part of Estero Boulevard that's just dedicated to pedestrian activity. I know it's kind of more in the middle of Times Square, but that would probably be an easy place to do that. And it could maneuver around, and get closer to the shoreline. I just know there were some of those properties that are on the seaward side of that. It may be more difficult, but I don't know what's planned for those.
So what are the next steps in this? I mean, how would we, go about getting all this information out? Maybe hold some public meetings for businesses that might be interested. How do we get involved? Whatever would be our next steps with TDC and Lee County? I mean, how does that all come together?
We're prepared to kind of do a deeper dive and actually go into some concepts. Maybe pick an area that's for a focus and then actually run the coastal model and actually determine what those parameters are for the design. And maybe provide a concept or rendering to show what it.
What if I told you we already have that?
Okay.
Grand Resorts already did all that, and
Okay.
they've provided all their documentation to the town.
Okay.
So everything that you're talking about has already been, now maybe it needs to be updated because that was, a decade ago almost now.
Mhm.
So, but it has a lot of that modeling in
It's a
there.
starting point, for
But
sure.
it would be something that
Yeah.
you could at least look at.
Yep,
I don't know how,
we could do that.
I believe you guys should have it,
Yeah.
if you don't.
We do.
What is a construction time frame? Let's say this was, in a perfect world, we were gonna do the Times Square area. What would the construction time be for something like that? Can you apply that to a linear foot type of thing, or is it too difficult? So how long did it take to construct the one in Clearwater?
Now it's a very short one, the one, not the Hyatt, but the Wyndham. I think they had it built in 30 days.
Wow.
Well, yeah, but you've got DEP permit and you've got to get with FEMA. How long does that process take? It's got to be like a year at least, right?
Yeah, so we do have to go through FEMA to actually modify the map, and the process for this, is, you may be familiar with, it's a letter of map revision, or a LOMR. They do have what's called a CLOMR, which is a CLOMR, which is a conditional letter of map revision. That's based on a proposed project. So I would recommend that if it's pursued, that a CLOMR be facilitated to get FEMA's acceptance of the proposed changes. And then, depending on where this wall is in relationship to the CCCL boundary, we may or may not have to go to DEP. Most likely we will, I think, based on the map. So there's a DEP, there's the CCCL permit you would need, the local construction permit. Once the wall is built and we get as-built certified information, we go back to FEMA and formalize the letter of map revision there. We tell them it's been built, here's the as-built data, it's consistent with what we originally proposed, and then that's when they would physically change the map. So that, the CLOMR is usually like a 6-month time period, and then the as-built LOMR, doing the CLOMR should help streamline the as-built LOMR when it's constructed. I recommend doing that. There are some clients who have elected just to build the wall and then come in with the as-built LOMR, but then the as-built LOMR takes a little longer because it's FEMA's first time for seeing it. So they usually have more questions. So what we're doing on Outrigger is a CLOMR, and we're just about finished with that process. We're in the final review stage right now. And so all in all, from CLOMR to depending on construction time, to get the as-built loan, it's probably close to a year. That includes construction.
You just think about some of the benefits, the smaller benefits, just the amount of pools that
Oh my
that had to have
gosh,
been
yeah.
cleaned out, you know, at the resorts and the private houses over the last 5
And the
storms.
continued,
Mhm.
risk for that happening.
Well, and
in the
just to get
future.
all the beach businesses involved, you know, Pink Shell, Best Western, Margaritaville, just to where they have knowledge and consideration for this. It could be huge. Yeah,
John, you're awful quiet over there.
Well, a lot of my questions got answered. The cost was a key one with me. I'm a visual person. I'd like to see that Bonita Beach stuff, if you could send that.
Sure.
Also, I guess, maybe I'm a dreamer, but I would hope that there would be federal and state money that would be available for some sort of, I mean, we're doing mitigation now, at least on a state level, I think. So hopefully that would be maybe an avenue source for revenue. And also, I would think it would help with insurance as well for those businesses and maybe the,
And just to throw something out there, we already have an active DEP construction permit on our beach.
Okay.
So that could easily be adapted and amended to accommodate such an item. Once that's open and already evaluated, all the dirty work is done,
Great.
and it's just getting the config back into it to do the construction. So we're kind of 2 steps ahead in that process already.
The one in Bonita, are they getting any kind of grant funding?
The goal is to, we have a pending grant, it's based on it's the hurricane reimbursement shoreline, I think it's reinforcement grant, but it's a reimbursement to private property owners up to half of the cost or a maximum of $150,000, so.
Really?
But we have to show completion of the project. So we've submitted the application, it's pending. Once we have completion information, we can file that officially and they can process it.
We just spent roughly $50 million in federal, state, county, local tax dollars to renourish our beaches. Does a newly renourished beach, particularly at the intensity in which we've renourished our beaches, does that affect the placement of the wave wall?
It would only assist with additional mitigation. So your beach nourishment may help with that initial, first line of defense.
But does it impact where you put the wall, or is
No.
that, okay?
Well, the one in Clearwater seemed to, from what I noticed, was mostly behind the dunes.
Yes.
So the vegetation in the dunes were in front of the wall,
Yes.
and this was behind it. I think is kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, I'm just curious if it impacted where you put the wall, yeah.
Yes, I think we would need to make sure we keep it, we have that coastal construction setback line boundary that we need to pay attention to. And so we've been making sure we stay landward of that line so that we're not impacting your EC zoning district and we're not causing concern with the state.
You know, personally, I feel that this is probably one of the most important things we could do for this island, in the build back. And, whatever steps we have to do to get moving on it and get all of our costs and ducks in a row and, people involved, I think, we charge ahead. And I'm assuming we can't do that from this meeting, that it has to be brought up at a council meeting, is that correct?
That is correct.
So if we could get it on the agenda for our next council meeting, to walk through this so that everybody knows and we can get some more insights between now and then. I mean, to me, this is, if we can get the funding, if we can figure out how to make this work, if we can get people involved, this is just a no-brainer.
I think, I agree. And you only need another person to agree. I agree it should be discussed, but I'd like to look at things globally. I mean, if we could look at an island-wide solution, you can always pare it down.
Yep.
But
Yep.
look at an island-wide solution, I think that would do an immense amount of help in the real estate market as well,
Exactly.
as far as,
Everything.
giving that a good push. And I don't know, has there ever been an island that has done it the entire length of the island?
No, and I am a big proponent of that vision. because I think that's the best way to look at things.
Well, obviously, our biggest challenge would be getting buy-in. I don't think the businesses would be such a challenge, obviously, as we found out with the beach renourishment. But when they got hit with the second and third storms, we saw that number go up fairly quickly, if I'm not mistaken, as far as those that wanted to participate in the beach renourishment project. I think this would be a great value to some of the people that maybe are considering not wanting to do things because of the fear of the town, but protecting their asset is a big change, especially if there's grant funding available to
Right.
support half of it as an owner. So I would like to see and we can always bring it down, right? But start big and.
I love that, love that.
And Mr. Mayor, if I could, now you may be envisioning this when you say it, but just for your benefit, if you begin to explore that for the town, which I think is a great idea, would you also make sure you explore it in conjunction with a transportation corridor of some kind as well? Because we'd like to see that as part of the wall. It's not,
Yes.
I mean, there may be some folks who don't want that, but we'll, at least let's have it to look at so we can get a sense, so people can get a sense. Because we have severe congestion issues, particularly on the north end of the island, and if that can help solve that problem, or help solve that problem, that would be great.
Okay.
Was that what you were envisioning?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think that solves Moby Mat issues, that solves ADA compliance issues, that solves bike issues, walkability. You know, right now we're dealing with people who don't feel safe necessarily always riding their bike on Estero Boulevard.
Right.
Anybody that's ridden a bike on there understands that argument. But this potentially, I mean, again, anyone listening, if you haven't had a chance to go to Clearwater Beach to look at it, it's pretty impressive. And, you know, people think a long straight seawall, and this is not anything like that. And, you know, I thought, is there gonna be steps involved? It's very flowing. It was very impressive on how the transition from the beach to the hard path bike path was pretty impressive. So I would encourage anybody, I mean, you've got a real world example you can go look at that's fairly close by.
Yes.
Now that we're kind of coming out of season, you can maybe get around. You can get to Clearwater in less than 17 hours, but check it out.
Oh,
Yes. And even the ones on Bonita Beach, those condominiums on Bonita Beach, on Hickory Boulevard, we initially did, Dolphin Way and Seascape, the initial intent was to help with their flood insurance at that time. Because going from a V to an A, they would save like $50,000 a building. It was pretty significant.
Sure.
So you'll see that if you walk down there, you'll see that those portions of the wall cap extensions, and those all survived, but it's just to cover the building footprints, basically. But the Bonita Beach one is for the whole entire property, because they felt it was more important to
Sure.
protect the property. So,
Just one quick question about your company. Is it just you, or are there thousands of people behind you?
No.
Tell us the scope of your capacity to do something like this.
Sure. So J.R. Evans Engineering, we opened up in August of 2010. Josh Evans is our company president. I'm also a co-owner, and we have three other owners. We are a firm we have civil engineers, certified floodplain managers. We have a department that's focused on land development engineering, and then my department's focused on floodplain management, coastal engineering, stormwater design, all types of surface water projects. I have a team of 10 individuals, comprised of professional engineers, certified coastal engineers, hydraulic and hydrologic engineers, and designers. So they all handle their own, they have a multitude of projects they handle. So this is what we do every day.
Is this a niche business, or are there other firms that do exactly what you do?
I would think this is a niche. I believe that our closest firm that does what we do is you're probably familiar with Coastal Engineering. They do a lot of your beach nourishment projects and design. But I think we are more heavily involved with this type of project where it's looking at infrastructure and looking for opportunities to mitigate damage. I wholeheartedly believe that doing the dune restoration is like the number one thing that every coastal community should look at first. And not only doing the sand, but also the vegetation, because that vegetation will help hold in the sand. But then this is just, we all know that those waves will knock down the sand and erode it. So that's why there's a need to do the nourishment. So if you have something more structural as a second line of defense, it's,
This may sound like a dumb question, but
Not
does
from
the,
you, Jim.
does the wave wall, obviously it protects everything on the other side of the wall, or helps protect. Does it do anything just because of the wave action and its mitigation? Would it help save any of the beach sand that we've just pumped onto the island? Or would
it will prevent, so it,
Inland,
it basically slows down that water. You
The
can imagine
scouring
if a
of it.
stream where, you have a stream with a lot of flow, it has to make a really sharp turn. It will deposit sand or deposit sediment in the bank of that turn because it's slowing down the water. Same principle with this wall. It's gonna kind of disrupt the wave from continuing as fast, and it should deposit the material on the
That's
seaward
scary.
side.
Okay,
Yeah.
very good.
I would think it would help with the scouring too, which is what we noticed after
So-
Ian. You know, the water going out caused as much damage as the water coming in,
Yes,
and this would help with that.
yes. And we've actually, for Outrigger, the design includes, what we call like a splash pad. It's a concrete pad, that's, it'll be below, it'll be covered with sand or whatever material the client wants to put on top, but it's there as a reinforcement around the wall on the landward side to help reduce the potential for scour.
When is construction of the outrigger wall set to begin? In other words, can we go look at it?
No, we're in the we're in the Clomer review. I think probably we'll have that Clomer within the next 30 to 60 days. We're starting the permit process with DEP because it is seaward of the CCCL boundary. And then we'll be coming in with the local permit for the construction, so it could be a little while. Yeah.
Well, when you come back with some more information, can you also bring back funding sources that you see as far as grants,
Sure.
maybe that we haven't thought of? Obviously, you said you're designing one for Outrigger, so you've kind of got an idea, if this gets to fruition where it can be done the entire length of the island. Cohesiveness is obviously important,
Yes.
but it sounds like you guys are well versed in being able to tie into things to make it look like it's either not supposed to be there, or
Or
if you have to add
decorative.
on.
Yeah, it's not so like obstructive, I guess is
Yeah.
the word.
Yeah, 'cause that'll be the big.
Industrial.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a big square straight wall is probably not gonna be very visually appealing.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm sorry, one more question. Since you're the only item on the agenda today, we got a little time. I'm curious if the outrigger, obviously it protects, we just discussed protecting the new renourishment sand, and obviously we've talked about the other side of the wall, protecting the outrigger. But could it also have a potential benefit to the neighbors across the street from the outrigger?
Absolutely. So when we run the model analysis, we run the line of study, or they call it a transect line. And it'll actually show the wave heights decreasing as the water continues across the inland properties and adjacent properties. And
So this
'cause
would be a benefit not only to the outrigger, but to the neighborhood behind the outrigger?
Yes,
Okay.
and, because we've had to, answer the question on these types of walls, even for single-family properties, where we've done them on, they're so coastal, but they're like Sarasota Bay or Tampa Bay. We've done these for single-family properties. And we've had to answer the question from the local authorities, please make sure, please demonstrate you're not gonna cause increased flood risk to the neighbors. And we do that by running a line of study through the coastal analysis that kind of cuts, even at an angle, if there's an angled wave attack to the wall, we're actually showing that the wave heights are lower on the adjacent property when you compare pre versus post project conditions. So, even if, typically we'll model the wave coming straight on, but sometimes we have to look at even angled attacks. And
To me, it just, in my brain, it's no different than a house. The house is the first thing it hits, right, on the Gulf, and then it gets a little bit less as it comes inland.
right,
I just think of hibiscus. If this wall would've been on hibiscus, most of those houses probably would still be there today.
Yeah.
Cause there was nothing stopping that
Our
wave.
street too.
Yeah, from coming straight down
Yeah.
straight down the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, John?
Clomer's gonna be my next on-air name when I get back into country radio.
I thought it'd be Homer.
Homer.
We did this,
Gotta
we
keep
did
on
this
the
for a
ring when
house
you're
in
ready.
Marco Island on Cazambas Court, and the wall was finished right before, I think it was Hurricane Helene. And it, I have video of it, and it survived, and so now they're actually they're moving forward with building the house behind it. So,
Any questions? Any other questions?
So are you available on April 21st to come and we can do this again and have it for the public? And
yeah,
is that enough time?
I think so. We'll
It's
try to
about
get
a
more
week. It's like
examples and
10
more,
days.
yeah, I'll look at the,
Or in May, the first.
Yeah, I was
meeting in
gonna say,
May.
we're gonna have the FDOT presentation on the 21st for the bridge, the Tans Pass Bridge.
How about we leave it up to you and staff?
Yeah, you let us know.
As soon as you can, I mean, if it's a short window between now and the next
Yes.
meeting, but
Yeah.
okay,
if May works,
okay.
cause the more prepared you are,
May
the
would be
better.
probably be better, but
Just
but
let me
I-
know. Elizabeth.
I'll let Andy know,
Great,
yes.
great.
Thanks,
Thank you for your
Elizabeth.
time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the opportunity.
Elizabeth, do you have a card you can leave?
All right, our next item is the fiscal year 25-26 budget hearing dates. Is this you, Amy?
It's kind of myself and Joe combined here a
Okay.
little bit, but, we're just trying to set the schedule so we can let you figure out what's going on in September. We now have the school board meeting dates and the Lee County Board of County Commissioners dates. So we're just looking for some dates to set our September budget hearing meetings.
Do you have any suggestions?
So, I have a conflict. Unfortunately, I thought Labor Day was the 8th and it's the 1st, so I have a trip planned. I'm gonna be out of the country till probably the 9th.
Okay,
I haven't bought my ticket yet, but that's I'm looking at getting back on the 8th or 9th, but to get back and give it my full 100%, if we could maybe do the first one on the 11th or 10th or 11th. I don't wanna be out of the country and miss the meeting. I mean, it's too important.
sure. In the past, we that would be fine, the 11th. They don't have to be on a Monday. They can be, remember, these meetings are in the evening. And we try and leave more time towards the end of the month so finance can get all their paperwork completed and where it needs to be in time, so we don't wanna have it like on the 30th.
I'm okay with the 11th.
9/11.
Oh,
We've done it before.
12, so it gives you an extra day.
It's a Friday.
But they're in the evening, so I would rather do
Well,
the
and then you
11th.
have to decide also your regular meetings, are you gonna hold them morning, like at 9 AM like normal, and then come back in the evening? The regular meeting later in the day and go into the evening?
oh yeah, you're doing the same days, don't you?
You don't have to do
You
them
don't
the
have
same
to.
day, but.
So how much time, Joe, do you need it? Maybe we work backwards. How much time at the end of the month do you need to be able to do what you need to do?
Act like you'll be here, Joe.
Yeah,
Yeah,
The,
it's okay, the short timer.
the deadline for approving the budget is September 30th. So as long as it's approved by September 30th, the second hearing is by September 30th, it should be fine. And then the guidelines for the first hearing, it can be any time between September 3rd through September 18th. And that would be the time frame.
so if we did the 11th and the 25th, would that work for everyone?
The only date that I can't do in the evening is the 25th.
Okay.
So if we could work around that, that would be great.
What about the 24th?
That would be fine.
September
Anybody have an issue with that?
11th.
11th and 24th, and those are the evening meetings, and what would you like to do about your regular meetings?
Just writing this in now, so I have it.
So this is gonna be M and P, right?
And then would you like to hold an M&P in September also?
September's gonna be pretty busy, maybe not having an M&P that
I was gonna
month.
say, historically, we do not have the M&P in September.
I'm okay with that.
Agree, agree.
John, you okay with that?
Most definitely.
Okay.
So if Labor Day is the first, would our normal meetings then, normally they would be like the 8th and the 22nd?
Normally, we could move it to either the 2nd or,
So either way,
We have
you would be
no,
gone on the
Yeah.
2nd
Yeah,
or
we
the
have-
8th.
yeah,
Why don't we do them on the same, are people opposed to doing them on the same day as the budget meeting?
I'm not.
I'm not.
I've got a Swiffle meeting on the 11th, but I can miss it.
So the regular meetings on the
the
11th.
regular meeting on the same day.
Town
The only,
council at
the only
9.
thing that scares me is potential projects, like Monday was a marathon. I mean, you guys
Yeah.
would, I would assume you would,
Probably have to have them in the morning, right?
I would think to be safe.
well, yeah, you'd have
we
in the
would do
morning,
it
but I
at
mean,
9.
how long is the meeting gonna go? Are we gonna gavel out at 5 o'clock and then gavel back in at 5:05?
I would
We
hope with
could.
this much warning, we can plan around that a
Yeah.
little bit.
Okay.
So then if we did them on the same day at 9 o'clock, so September 11th and September 24th,
Yeah, I have no issues with that.
And then the evening meeting has to be held after 5 PM, so
mhm.
So that generally means 5:01, is that what you traditionally do?
if that's the time you call for, or 5:15, 5:05.
501.
In my
is
notes-
5:01.
typical.
5:01 is typical.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. So the 11th and the 24th.
So just to reiterate, we'll have the meeting September 11th, the regular meeting at 9 AM, the budget hearings at 5:01 PM. And September 24th, the regular meeting at 9 AM, budget hearings at 5:01 PM. No M&P in September.
Correct.
Correct.
Perfect, thank you.
So the meeting on the 22nd then is moved to the 25th, or 24th?
24th.
Correct. At 9 and 5:01. That's all I have for that item then.
For you? Well,
Well, I have a related issue, and this would be the setting of the maximum millage rate. And so, in the last few years, that was done in June because we needed to have it set by August 4th, and in the past, it just didn't work out with the town council meetings in August. But this year, August 4th is actually a town council meeting date. So it is possible to wait as long as August 4th to set the maximum millage rate. And just kind of to remind you, so in June is when we get the estimated taxable values. July 1st is when we get the final taxable values. So in the past, we've been trying to base our maximum millage rate on an estimated number, and then on July 1st, we get the actual number, and that's why we could then suddenly change it or back down on the maximum millage rate. And there were, comments made last year that we really shouldn't have to go through that fire drill if we can help it, and perhaps consider having setting the maximum millage rate in the July town council meeting if you so desire, or you could
But
wait
there is
until
no July
August.
town
well, we'd
council
have to have a
meeting.
special meeting for
Right,
that.
so then, right, so that's up to you, if you want to avoid having to set it based on a maximum, on a estimated value in June, or wait until August to do it based on the actual taxable value.
Let me ask you, Joe, and you've been in this position, I think, coming in for a new person, what would you recommend would be easiest for them?
Well, it's easier for everyone if we know the actual number we're working with.
Right.
Because then you're not speculating or trying to guess somehow. So I think that's the easiest thing. The only.
So that would be August.
I would
right?
recommend the August 4th date, because that's the date it's actually due, but you're just under pressure, you have
Sure.
to make a decision that day. There's no time to postpone it. But on the flip side, since we will know the actual information on July 1st, and the budget is due to be presented to the town council by July 15th, in a formal document, you could have it at least a couple of weeks in advance to know what it's going to be, and then there's time to then consider, options between July 15th and August 4th.
I thought I heard you say that you had to have it set by August 1st. Did I mishear what you said?
I'm sorry, if maybe I misspoke or didn't speak clearly, it's August 4th.
Is the deadline, you have to
4th.
have it submitted.
Yes.
Okay. So we wouldn't have to go through the two meetings we wouldn't have to do the tentative and then the actual millage rate.
Mhm.
Correct.
Okay. How do you feel about that, Scott?
I'm fine with it. August,
Darren?
I would rather have it just one time.
one time, yeah.
Well, yes, okay. Go ahead. I concur. John?
Well, what will people write about?
There'll be plenty to write about, John. We'll be fine. All right, August 4th, we'll,
August 4th, millage rate. You got it.
and by the 15th, we should get the budget from finance?
Yes, that's, according to the town charter, that's supposed to be delivered to you by July 15th. It's not necessarily the final version, obviously, because there's hearings afterwards, but that would be, that's like the foundational document.
Got it. Okay.
And Joe, you'll base that budget off the current millage rate.
Well, I won't be here, but I would presume so. I mean, that's the idea, to show you what
Just
it would be.
Make sure they're clear.
Right, and then maybe there'll be options for you to consider, as part of it, but it would be based on the actual millage rate.
I kind of liked how you did it last year, Joe, where you said, hey, if it's here, we'll have this much more in reserves. If it's here, we'll have this
Right.
much more.
Yes.
Comparisons.
So
Yes.
that's very helpful. So whomever steps in behind you, and I'm still not very happy you're leaving, but
Still
None
time.
of us
sad.
are.
Still time,
But
Joe.
still time,
Everybody-
Joe.
Still time, Joe.
But I would think if we could, if in your I understand you're trying to write down for the next person what your process is, and I think that was very helpful to us last year. So,
Well, I'll be sure that there's notes and that people know that that's part of what the recommendation is.
So Joe, as you're standing there, obviously there's a big variable not knowing what the county numbers are, but since you're here and you've ingested a lot of information over the last few years, what do you postulate? Are you optimistic? You think we'll be able to stay where we're at? Are you pessimistic? What's your gut tell you? Off the record here, of course.
Oh, yeah.
public
Everything
record.
off.
Can we
Turn everything
dim
off.
the mics? Yeah.
No, I'm honestly, it's a question mark in my mind, because I don't know how much higher the taxable property value will go. I mean, I'm optimistic and hopeful based on what happened last year that we'll see a similar increase. If we see that, then we should be fine. It's just, I don't know how much. And then actually raising the millage rate, like each increment, it doesn't, I mean, it generates obviously more revenue, but it's not significant amounts of revenue. So you would have to, if we're significantly short or need significantly amount of increased revenue for other things like capital projects, you would probably have to raise it significantly. But I don't, obviously the goal is to try not to raise it at all and to see what we can do within that, like what the limits are. But the things that are out there that I think are concerns, we've been able to get by the last couple of years without really a capital improvement plan and budget, because it was all focused on recovery and just trying to restore, repair, rebuild what we already had lost through Hurricane Ian, and that was all being covered by insurance and FEMA reimbursements. So the funding for all of that came through that. But as we move forward and we're getting back more to, there's more normalcy involved, you need to have a budget that can generate additional revenues for capital improvements. And so far, that's not been the case. These last couple of years, we've just been surviving, operationally with the revenue coming in. So, but, as the town picks up with more like parking revenues and more property tax revenues, we might be in a position, I don't know yet, but maybe that would be enough to also then generate some additional revenue for capital improvements. But that would be my concern, is you just need to make sure that you also have that. And beach renourishment is a huge expenditure that we've been fortunate to have so many grants, that have come our way. But that's an ongoing expense, and that has not been included in the budget. We've had like carryover amounts that were set aside in previous years that was included in the budget to continue funding, but there's not been a new source of revenue to help fund it other than grants, but there's always our share. And we don't have anything on reserve to cover our share going forward, at least not a significant amount. So, those are other concerns that need to be factored into the decision of whether or not the millage rate should be increased. But I think if it is increased, you have to have specific reasons, like what is this going to fund, not just increase it, because you have to have the actual spending plan behind it to justify it.
Makes sense.
Is this potential for the state to forgive the loan, is that a variable that could go our way and be helpful, or does it really impact your budget dynamic all that much?
No, that'd be absolutely helpful, because, we already have the revenue replacement grant, so that takes care of $7.5 million of it. But, eventually we're gonna have to repay the total, I think, is it the 11, I'm already forgetting the total amount, 11.9 million. So we eventually have to repay that. So I think so far, the $7.5 million will replace what we've used, that along with some interest revenue that's earned. So we'll have the full amount to repay. And so that we'll be okay in that sense. But if they forgive the loan, then we would have that much, the 11.9 million, that would become available for capital improvements, for beach renourishment, and all the things that the town needs to do. So I think we're on the cusp of needing to start doing that, and we just have to be able to generate the revenue to do that.
I think you're telling me I need to start begging harder, Joe. That's what I'm hearing.
I'm
Is
sorry,
that you?
All of us.
I'm sorry, what was?
No, I'm cracking a joke. That's all.
Okay,
That is still the focus, just not this year.
Oh, it's not an option this year?
We've been told, don't even ask.
Stand down.
Okay, all right, just curious.
Really?
Yeah. Not just us,
Tightening the strings.
everyone. I mean,
Oh.
we just found out this $4.5 billion difference between the Senate and the House budget, creating some waves.
Well, if we put up a mitigating wall, no.
Touche. All right, thanks, Joe. Now we got agenda management for 2025. Anybody have anything to add, change, alter?
So when will, I see Terry Prasad's Times Square thing on here for May 19th. When will the arches come? If it was approved yesterday in LPA, when will that come?
I believe it's the
First
first May meeting, and then the first June meeting.
Correct.
And
So
then
5-5
Prasad's
and-
will be the second May,
Between.
2nd June.
Okay.
That's the plan so
Can
far.
Go over that again, Amy?
Correct.
Yes, the arches will come back, I believe, the first May regular town council meeting for
Think
their
that's
first
correct.
hearing.
Just
And then the
5-2.
No, it's
Correct.
5-5.
And
May,
then,
Single
it's
demand.
5-5.
5-5.
My wedding anniversary, I know these things.
And then their second reading would be on June 2nd. And then Mr. Prasad's Times Square project is coming to the LPA on the 29th of this month, is tentatively scheduled now for the 19th of May for their first reading before you, and then the June 16th for their final reading.
So the LPA has 2 meetings this month?
Correct, they have another one on the 29th.
I understand it's gonna be long also, the 29th.
You bringing your pajamas?
Scott, anything else?
No, sir.
Karen? Jim?
No.
Nothing.
Okay, before we adjourn, we got this letter that you guys got. It's a letter to the TDC that would like permission to submit to Chairman Ruane and to Vice Chair Johnson to present for tomorrow's meeting, request to get some TDC funding, help for the Fourth of July fireworks. We just need consent to go ahead and allow me to sign the letter and have staff submit it to them today.
I'm in.
I'm in.
Consent.
I am.
Okay, we'll take care of that.
Mr. Mayor, may
yes.
I add one more thing before we adjourn?
Yes.
On April 22nd at 1:30 PM, we are going to hold a sunshine training for all the advisory committee members. It's open to any of the advisory committee members. You all are welcome to come to if you wish.
Okay.
It should be hour to 2 hours long, maybe.
Just to clarify, is this something they're mandated to do?
We highly encourage everybody to attend it. We're hoping to make this a yearly event.
Okay,
What
that
time will
won't-
that be?
1:30 is.
April 22nd at 1:30 PM.
Okay.
Well, the good thing is, I'm assuming it's gonna be recorded and people can then watch it.
It will
if they
be,
can't make
yep,
it.
we'll broadcast it, just like we do every meeting, we'll broadcast it and record it.
So those that can't make it can watch it at their convenience.
Mhm.
But make sure they watch it.
And also through the Florida League of Cities, they usually put on webinar training that you can sign up for to do as well. Okay, with that,
Move to adjourn.
all right, we've got a motion and a second. Anything else? Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at